Our lesson this morning comes from the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 50. Genesis chapter 50. And as Brother Dale read to us from chapter 50 and verses 15 through 21, chapter 50 and verse 15 through 21. The purpose or the title of the lesson this morning is God Meant It for Good. And that is a quote from what Joseph told his brothers. Their thoughts were that even though Joseph, since they had been reintroduced to him, had been very commendable to them and had helped the family and helped his father, but his father was dead now. And so they thought that possibly Joseph would take this opportunity to get back at them for the bad things that they had did to him. And so they sent him a message saying what their father wanted, and that they wanted to ask for forgiveness for what they had done. And they pled with him that he would be merciful to them. And Joseph's reply was that he was not God and not going to do to them what they had done to them. He said, I know that your intentions for me were bad, but God meant it for good. And that is something very important for us to think about when we are faced with the challenges of our life, the things that may have become difficult situations for us and that may have challenged us, that actually God meant those things for good. When we think about our life, we think that right now, at this moment, today, that we're here not only because of God's grace, but we're here as a combination of the good things and the not so good things that we've done in our life. Our life is sometimes compared to a battery in a car. Battery has a positive and a negative side. And it takes the combination of the positive and negative in order for the battery to work. And you know, we've, in all of our life, have not always done good. We've done some bad things in life, and we've done some good things. And we've learned lessons from both of those experiences. And so in reality, our life is a composition of those negative and good things that have happened in our life, the things that we've learned from the negative and the things that we've learned from the positive. When Joseph's life is looked at in perspective, it is clear that God had a purpose for him and his family. Joseph was a very young boy when he was introduced to us in the 37th chapter of the book of Genesis. He was a young man that was in a family, a large family, headed by their father Jacob. And the Bible tells us that his brothers, because maybe of Joseph's behavior, because maybe of the fact that Joseph was favored by his brother, by his father more than them, they've developed a resentment toward Joseph. Joseph, of course, was the son of the woman that Jacob really loved, and he really kind of favored Joseph above all of those other boys. And even when his father rather, had sent Joseph out to take some food to his brothers on one occasion. And the Bible tells us that he sent food to them and sent Joseph to see how they were doing. When they saw him ways off, that the Bible says that they began to plot about how they were going to treat him when he got to them. And of course, you are familiar with the fact that they initially plotted to kill him. And of course, that was averted, and he was placed in a hole. And then when some Ishmaelite traders came by, they sold him into slavery. And so at a younger age, Joseph was treated shamefully, disrespectfully, cruelly by his brothers. He grew up in Pharaoh's household, or Potiphar's household, and during that time, from your reading of the Bible, that his wife developed a liking for Joseph, and she conspired to try to entrap Joseph. But Joseph rebuffed her attentions on more than one occasion. And finally, when she just made her move blatantly toward Joseph, he ran out of the house, and he ran so fast that he left his coat. And because of that rejection, she devised a plan to punish Joseph, and Joseph was cast into prison, evidently a prison where the royal prisoners were being held. And so Joseph found himself not only estranged from his family, not only in a foreign land, but now he was in prison. I guess he figured that things probably could get no worse. And he was there in prison, but God was still with him, as you are aware. He became a trustee, as we might call him today, of the prisoners, or in charge of them. And he revealed dreams to two of the prisoners that were there. And he asked that they remember him when they got out of the prison, or that one in particular, that when he got out of prison, that he would remember him, but he forgot him. And it wasn't until some time later that when the Pharaoh had a dream that disturbed him greatly, but he didn't know what it meant, that his servant remembered that there was someone that had interpreted dreams for him. And that's where Joseph was released from prison and began to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh. As you remember, Joseph was released from prison, and Joseph was put in charge. Joseph became like the third ruler of the land of Egypt. He was put in charge of overseeing the preparation for when there would be a time of famine that would later come years later. And as Joseph's brothers and his father had to come to Joseph for grain, this is how the family got back together again. But now this was near the end of the 50th chapter and near the end of Joseph's life as well. And the father had died, and the brothers were in a dilemma. What was going to happen to them now that the father was dead? And so Joseph reassured them that I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do everything I can to take care of you and your family. Because even though that you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. What can we learn from this in our life? How can I grow spiritually and understand that the difficult things that happen in my life and in yours are not designed to make us bad, but designed to make us better? Someone has said that problems in life can either make you bitter or make you better. It's up to you as to what you choose for those problems to be. You know, our families can be great, our careers can be great, our church can be great, but it depends on what we determine the outcome of things. You know, our life can be what God wants it to be if we stay focused on God. If we bring up our children in the nurture and the admonition of God, if we keep our eyes focused on things that are spiritual, we can be the kind of people that God wants us to be. Our careers can be the kind of career that you can dream of and dreams are made of, but we have to stay focused on God. You have to look at the bigger picture. You can't be deterred by the faults that happen in life or by the obstacles that are in our way or by the challenges that are before us. You must look at a bigger goal. You might have a bigger goal to have a wonderful career that is spiritually based, or it may not be spiritually based. Just a good career that you can build and help your family. But you can't be deterred by every difficulty, every bump in the road, every challenge that happens in our lives. You have to be focused on God. And then our church. Our church can be great. We have examples in the Bible of congregations that were great and some that were not so great. We have an example of the church earlier that was the church at Ephesus. It was a good church. But then when we get to the point in Revelation where Jesus had to write them a letter, we found that they were still holding to the truth that they had believed in. But there was a problem that developed in that congregation, that they had lost their first love. They seemed to have lost their focus. That was the church at Smyrna. It was a persecuted church, but they remained faithful to the Lord. If we experience persecution, what will our end results be? Will we be faithful? Will we fall by the wayside? Will we keep pushing forward? Or will we be faithful like the church at Smyrna? There's a church at Pergamos. It was a compromising church, a church that compromised the will of God. There's the church at Thyatira. It was a corrupt congregation. We don't want to be a compromising church or a corrupt congregation. There was the church at Sardis. It was a dead church. We don't want to be a dead church. We know that God can bring death to life if it is His will. We want to be like the church at Philadelphia, a faithful congregation, one that persisted in its faithfulness. Not like the church at Laodicea that was lukewarm, that God described that He would spew it out of His mouth because of His lukewarmness. We want to be a faithful congregation. We have to press forward in spite of the challenges in life so we can decide what we want to be. We can decide what direction we want to go in. We can decide what kind of church we want to be if we're faithful to God. And brothers and sisters, I'm glad to say that you've shown that you want to be a faithful church. You want to be a church that helps and reaches out to others. You want to be a church that lifts up those that are lost. You want to be a congregation that looks after the orphans. You want to be a congregation that helps the fatherless. You want to be a congregation that's faithful to the Lord. And that's what we have to look at. Regardless to what the world looks at us, the world may mean us wrong. The governor may mean you're wrong. And they may say, officials may say that, well, we want to protect you, so we don't want you to go to church anymore. See, they may think they're doing good, but we have to keep our minds and eyes focused on God. Regardless of what the challenges in life are, you have to remember that others may mean it for evil, but God means it for good. I invite you, if you've not obeyed the gospel of Christ, to submit your life to him this morning. Give your life to Jesus as we together stand and sing.